My name is Roy Kelly. I do this the last Saturday of every month. And we are reading today with the Herbcrafter's Tarot, a beautiful deck by Latisha Guthrie and artwork by Joanna Powell Colbert. We've been talking a little bit about equinoxes and how this energy calls us to rebalance our lives if things have gotten out of whack. And the waning moon, which is a good time for letting things go. To kind of round that out, let me pull a card for us. This is our, what can we do with this energy in the coming month? That's my intention when I pull these cards. And the answer is the Ace of Air, Yarrow. I have to tell you, in my personal life, which I don't know if that is like indicative of a general mood. I've been mostly pulling just for myself lately and haven't been doing a lot of readings for others in this particular month because it's been a busy one. In my personal life, however, I'm getting a lot of air, and I'm getting a fair amount of pages as well, which indicates that there's a time for learning right now. Pages are about learning, they're about new beginnings, and air is in particular about learning and taking in information and analyzing information. The Ace of Air suggests the possibility of an epiphany. Let's approach our lives in this coming month with the assumption that the breakthrough is there if we're listening for it. The possibility of change and improvement is there if we're listening for it. Yarrow is the Ace of Air's herb. Yarrow is one of my favorite herbs. I really love it. It's considered by some, considered a friend by others. It grows naturally in a lot of places. It grows easily and well. It also has some actual medical uses in like herbal medicine. I remember reading a book, please don't do this at home unless you actually know what you're doing, but I remember reading a book that said it could actually be used to stop bleeding if you didn't have like access to like a styptic pencil or something like that, and there was a bleeding issue, that yarrow could actually be used to help a wound stop bleeding. Obviously, please don't put plants on your wounds unless you know what you're doing. I always want to like share that when we share like herbal lore, because I think sometimes people are like, yeah, I'll just try this. And, make sure you wash things if you're putting them on your body. make sure you're following good practices to make sure you're not introducing any kind of possible infection or anything like that. But yarrow does have these purifying medical uses. And it's just a great flower. It's just really nice. It's really nice for the bees. And so when we talk about purification, that also brings to mind this idea of like analyzing the information we are given rather than just kind of like letting it all blow by us and overwhelm us. It's an opportunity for us to purify our brain space by using a wise filter, by identifying what of this information that is coming at me is necessary and important, what is meaningful and I should derive some meaning out of that, and what is just noise. Let's be real, we are assaulted with a lot of noise these days. Is there a way we can filter out the noise and deliberately focus in on what's important? Savannah says that deck is so beautiful. Yes, it's really a beautiful deck. And wow, I could get lost in that yarrow card art. Yeah, I agree. I also really love how this is like, we see yarrow pictured here on the edge of like a barbed wire fence. It looks like the plant behind it is maybe wild roses. I might see some sassafras too. So these are all things that kind of just pop up. These are plants that just show up along railroads, like along the side of the road in areas that aren't really particularly cared for. These are plants that thrive. And that's something we're thinking about too. How can we thrive even in the absence of care, even in the absence perhaps of sometimes getting our needs met? Are there ways we can thrive? This is what I'm putting out to you as the energy of this coming month. How can we use it? We can be very analytical. We can ask ourselves how we can find ways to thrive despite conditions that may feel austere or difficult. And we can deliberately process our information very carefully. All right. Let me get to some patron readings. If I have any patron requests, let me take a look. Yes, I see a couple. And then I will start pulling a card for anyone who would like one. As always, if you just tuned in, hi, my name is Rory. This is the Witchy Weather Report. And as always, if you would like me to pull a card for you, we have a secret code. And the secret code is to drop a cat in the chat. Either a cat emoji or write the word meow if you don't have an emoji keyboard handy. Whatever works. Let me get my, I'm looking for my Witchy Weather Report banner, and I can't find it. Let me just make one real quick for us. Witchy Weather Report. There we go. All right, so I have some questions from patrons. If you'd like to become a patron, you absolutely can. You can see the link scrolling across the bottom there. And I just popped it into the chat, patreon.com/TessaFastTarot. We're a very supportive community of people with a really different wealth of backgrounds. You know, we're spiritual in different ways, or psychologically, like psycho-spiritual, you know, leaning more on that end of it than on needing to have a particular belief. So my first question from Grayson is, do the cards have any advice on how to make myself a more consistent person? So let me pull a card for you, Grayson. Anyway, if you'd like to be a part of the Patreon community, get these like first crack at Witchy Weather Report questions, you are welcome to. It's $1 a month or more. I keep it super low just so that it's a private community, so you do have to hop over the paywall to get in, but then you're in with us and you get access to a few different exclusive benefits. Grayson, Hija of Fire, California Poppy. Hija means daughter. In this deck, Hijas are like pages. So we're looking at, again, a sense of learning and beginner level. And what you're asked to do is, this is interesting because you asked about consistency, and what came up was fire. And fire is associated with impulsivity. California poppies, in addition with being associated with remembrance, are by some literally associated with being high. You know, we think about opium when we think of poppies, I think. And fire is about impulsivity. It's about passion. And so I'm going to ask you to take a circular approach to your question of how can I be a more consistent person, and ask yourself, are there impulses and passions? Is there fire in you that you are ignoring? Is there stuff that maybe in your efforts to be consistent, you have either suppressed or put to the side with an attitude of like, I don't have time to feel that now, or I don't have time to pursue that right now. I need to focus, that kind of attitude. And what happens when we, of course, as you probably know, what happens when we push things to our subconscious is they don't go away. They just go into our subconscious, and we end up having less control over them because our subconscious will poke its head up whenever it gets the opportunity to. So Grayson, my suggestion to you is actually to explore, what is it that you feel is getting in the way of consistency for you? And is it possible that what's actually happening is you may be pushing yourself to be consistent to the extent that you're putting aside things that truly are important, truly do light you up, right? Our inner fire, our passion, our impulses. So what I'm going to ask you, Grayson, is to lean in right now. Lean into your impulsivity. Lean into what may feel like distractions, and ask yourself if there's something there that you can learn about yourself. Being consistent as a person is usually a more of a psychological thing and less of a willpower thing. I think a lot of people have the idea of like, well, I just need to apply my willpower and I just need to like follow a schedule and blah, blah, blah. And if there's something in our subconscious or something emotional going on for us, or just life going on for us that is preventing that, all the willpower in the world isn't what's going to fix it, because your willpower isn't the problem. The problem is that, first of all, we can't 24/7 be applying willpower to our life. That is a renewable resource, but it is a resource that can get depleted. We can't just always be pushing. There need to be times in life when we're not. And those are the times when whatever is subconscious is going to come up and say hello. And often in a destructive way if we have been suppressing it actively, right, for the last 24 hours or whatever. So I'm going to ask you to look at your impulses and look at it as a learning project, and look at the areas where you feel you are inconsistent, and ask yourself what's happening here, and see if you can identify some patterns. And instead of kind of flagellating yourself about it, love yourself about it. Like, if this keeps happening, even though you don't want it to, it probably reflects an unmet need. So maybe you can find a way to meet that need once you understand what it is that's maybe blocking your consistency in a way that is kind of more harmonically engaged with the rest of your life. Maybe you can find a way to say yes to that need instead of saying no to it constantly, so it never has a chance to do anything other than mess with your schedule. Let's see who else we got on deck. I have some patrons on deck. Next up, we had from Savannah. My question is, how can I support myself? I love this question, Savannah. I love asking for help in such a beautiful intention as just like self-support. Yes. Savannah, we got again the Ace of Air. I don't know if y'all saw me. I've been shuffling like a mad woman. Again, Savannah, you are called to the Ace of Air. We got a lot of air going on right now. The Ace of Air indicates that you need a new way of thinking about supporting yourself. So, and that's normal. You know, if you're noticing like, oh, I don't feel supported and the things that usually work aren't working, then that means that you need a little bit of a breakthrough. So I'm going to recommend to you, if you're really like, oh, I don't know, then I'm going to recommend a listening practice of some kind to you. And I'm going to recommend a listening practice to yourself, if you would. Maybe try reaching out to, I'm going to say, 2 aspects of yourself, your inner child and your higher self, and see what they have to say. That may look like 2 separate sessions. It might look like a meditative like jam session where you all sit down for tea. It might look like automatic writing, whatever feels good to you. It might look like a tarot spread if that feels more comfortable for you, because I know you are a tarot person. I want you to listen to yourself a little bit and gain understanding about how you are not feeling supported, because I think that's going to give you the keys to begin to support yourself better. And I know, because I know you, Savannah, like you are such an organizer, you're so resourceful, and you're so good at identifying ways to kind of keep things running, keep a flow. I'm thinking of like your posts about your daily rhythms on your Instagram and stuff like that. And I have a feeling if you do that important listening to yourself and get a better understanding of like what's missing, what's the missing piece here, I have a feeling you'll be able to like run with it and build it into your daily flow so that you get supported better. Savannah says, ooh, a listening practice. That is wonderful. I love a good listening practice. I am actually in the middle of a kind of multi-day listening practice right now. And it's really, it's like, it's both like coming home and it's like, when a tarot reading calls you out, that kind of thing. It's also like, oh, I guess I really have to face up to this stuff. All right, let's see who else is on deck. Brittany has no specific question, but does want a card. Brittany, let me pull a card for you now. Brittany, your card is the Fool and Dandelion. Don't you just love dandelions? Like, we're coming very close on dandelion season. Not yet, but dandelions are one of the first flowers that come up this time of year, here in the Northeast, I should say. Look at this beautiful dandelion mandala. I think this is such a beautiful card. And reflects, we see this butterfly here reflecting this newness, this like need for adventure as well as a sense of lightheartedness, which the Fool brings us. We also see a little messenger bag here indicating that you may be packing for a journey. So I'm going to encourage you to think about having a new adventure in your life. That might look like a particular new adventure, whether it's like literally taking some kind of travel or like getting into a hobby or an idea you've always wanted to pursue and not had time to, or starting writing something new, or whether it is just about approaching your life with a sense of adventure, because I know a lot of your life, because I know you, I know that you have been working on just getting things to work in your kind of day-to-day existence a lot lately. And it may be that what you need in order to move to the next step is to give yourself a chance to breathe and feel a sense of adventure. And instead of being the person in control, the person orchestrating everything, the person making it all happen, to allow yourself to be the person on a journey, to allow yourself to be wide-eyed and innocent for a little while. Can you schedule wide-eyed innocence into your life? An interesting idea. I'm going to throw that to you and ask yourself, how can I bring more wide-eyed innocence into my life. Savannah says, thank you so much. You're so welcome. You're very welcome, Savannah. All right, next Patreon question is from Hannah Westlock. Hannah says, I'm trying to decide whether or not to initiate a hard conversation. If you could pull for that, absolutely. And I think, in fact, what I'm going to do, and you know I usually limit to 1 card pulls, but because this is a either or thing, I'm going to pull a card for, here's the card about initiating the conversation, here's the card about not doing so. So let me pull 2 cards for you on that. Here's the initiatory card. Here's the not initiating card. Okay, so initiating a hard conversation, we have Mother of Air, Motherwort. This indicates to me it's worth doing. Mother of Air is the Queen of Swords in traditional tarot. Someone who is analytical, someone who is willing and able to speak her truth. Now, the Mother of Air can be seen negatively because our society doesn't like when women speak their minds. So yeah, it's true. Sometimes the Mother of Air gets pushback. Rarely is it because the Mother of Air herself is actually like bitchy or bossy or any of the things people might saddle her with. It's because she is someone who respects herself and respects her intellect and speaks freely, and there are people who still have a problem with it when women do that. So I'm going to encourage you, and Motherwort too is a really interesting herb. I am not by any means a practicing herbalist or anything. I'm just like an enthusiast. I think herbs are neat, and you'll notice I pronounce it with the H, like herbs, because I enjoy pronouncing it that way and nobody can stop me. But Motherwort in particular is a herb that has a lot of healing uses and has, like, people have mixed feelings about it, has a reputation for being bitter or like, you know, like hard to swallow, which I think is really interesting when paired with the Madre of Air. Because the Queen, again, the Queen of Swords, can be perceived as being bitter or hard to swallow when she's in fact just speaking the truth. And I'm going to invite you, as someone who knows your truth intimately and also has a way of communicating that you have developed over years, to ask yourself if you choose to initiate this conversation, if you can do so as the Queen of Swords might, with a sense of nuance, with a sense of wisdom, with a sense of considering your audience so that it goes as well as it can, without necessarily kowtowing. And what I see here, the Emperor / Hemlock is for what happens if I don't initiate this conversation. Now, the Emperor, in this case, to me, can really represent the status quo. It represents the leadership that is currently in power, continuing to be in power. Now, I don't know if this difficult conversation has to do with someone actually in leadership, or perhaps someone who just is used to taking charge and not used to hearing opposing viewpoints. So what I think I want to share with you is basically, if you don't initiate the conversation, then you already know what happens, which is nothing, which is no change occurs. You are going to have to be the instigator of change if you want things to get moving in a different direction. And that's all I'm going to say. I am not a person who likes to give advice. Every situation is different. Every person is different. Sometimes we make choices based on what we think is right. Sometimes we make choices based on like how much energy we have available for that thing in that moment, and it's all valid. So I'm going to let you make the choice about what you want to do, but that's what the tarot has to say about it. Hey, Patty Bell, by the way, I haven't said hello to you yet. How are you doing? It's so good to see you. It's been a minute. All right, I want to see quick if I have any other formal questions from patrons, and then after that we're going to go into everyone in the chat. If you're just tuning in, this is the Witchy Weather Report. Our card for the coming month, for the coming weeks, is the Ace of Air, which is associated in this deck with Yarrow. And this suggests to us that it's time to be analytical. It's time to consider all the information that life is giving us, because life is giving us constant information, and to do two things. One, to process it and ask yourself, okay, what of this information is important? What is just noise? And two, to identify, and how can this information serve me? If I'm trying to solve a problem, what do I need to consider? I don't need to consider all of it. I just need to know what the focus should be. So focusing ourselves and identifying what's important, both in terms of our input and in terms of our selves, right? what matters to me right now, because some things we can just let be noise. There's a tendency sometimes for something to crop up that might annoy us or press a button, and sometimes it's a problem that needs solving, and sometimes it really isn't. Sometimes it's just something that pushes our buttons, and the problem that needs solving is us realizing that we don't have to jump every time that button is pushed, right? That we can have a choice in our response and our reaction. All right. Let's see who is up next. All right, I'm just going to take the chat as is. I know I got some patrons who were in the chat who asked on the spot, and don't worry, I know I'll get to you. I'm going to get to everybody, so I'm just going to go in order. Oh, Hannah's over on Instagram and says, that's pretty spot on. It's a very helpful frame for me to examine it from. Thanks. You're very welcome. That's something I love to do about the tarot. Sometimes people have a yes or no question, and if it's a personal choice, not like a will this happen, but a, should I do this? I love to say, here's what happens if you do, here's what happens if you don't, and allow the cards to kind of speak that way, because I don't think we should allow a bunch of pretty pictures printed on cardstock to make decisions for us. I think it's helpful to consult the tarot for information, and you can decide for yourself whether that comes from a spiritual source, whether it comes from a subconscious source, whether it's merely just the psychology of having these things shown to us at the right moment in the right time that makes us have a series of interesting thoughts. I think it's useful. It helps us make decisions, but I don't want us to get to a point where we're consulting divination to make decisions for us. Like, let's own our free will. Let's let ourselves have our choices. We can have a choice sometimes. That's a treat. All right, Anna, here is a card for you. Your card is the Hija of Earth, Linden. So, Hija of Earth means daughter of Earth. It's like a page in a traditional tarot deck. So I'm going to talk about, I told you a lot of pages are coming up. I thought maybe it was just me. It's not just me. It's big page energy. Remember how we had big knight energy at the start of last year? I feel like we have big page energy, and it means that it's time for everyone to be a student. Whatever that means for us to be a student. And in particular, being an Hija of Earth, a student of Earth, if you will, Anna, really is about your resources and getting your basic needs met. Now, that's not just limited to like food and shelter. I consider relationships to be a part of basic needs. I consider like our core relationships, our living situation, that day-to-day stuff that affects our mindset. Like, of course, that's a part of our basic needs, because you can have all your needs met and be living, for example, with like a toxic person or have a toxic day-to-day work life, and you're still miserable. So, like, it's important. And I want you to be a student of your needs and your resources at this time. I want you to let the pressure drop from your shoulders about trying to fix anything in that department right now. I'm not saying there aren't things to be fixed. I'm not saying there aren't real problems. I want you to let the pressure off and just tell yourself, I'm going to be analytical for a little while. I'm just going to look and observe what happens in a kind of detached way. And then maybe I will make some analysis, but only after I've done some observation. Again, I'm going to suggest the idea of a listening practice. And instead of listening, you can do this in a formal way, like listening to yourself, like morning pages or journaling can be a great listening practice in that way. Also just like listening in terms of seeing the world around you through kind of new eyes, through eyes that maybe are a little less emotional, a little more analytical. Maybe, like pretend you're a Vulcan for a minute and just take in the information around you and just allow that information to become a new understanding of your life and what's going on and what the current status quo is, especially around resources and needs. And then we can start to analyze. But usually when a page comes up in this situation is because there's something that needs to be learned. And so the easiest way to learn something, if you're like, am I missing the lesson, is just to shut up and listen for a while. Sometimes all we have to do is listen, and it becomes very obvious what our next steps are. So there you go. That's your card. Savannah says, it's interesting that the collective card for the next month and my card is Ace of Air, Swords, because my card for the month of April is Queen of Swords. Maybe once I tune in and listen to myself, I can share my truth and stand in my power. I absolutely love that, Savannah. I really feel that. Yeah, it sounds like, because the aces are kind of like a revolution, like a small personal revolution, but a revolution, nonetheless, a breakthrough. So maybe you get the opportunity to have that breakthrough after you have done that listening work with yourself. Maybe it's like it's really within you. I love when the cards are like that. Hey, you got this, babe. But like also still give us a clue of how to got this. How to got this. I speak the English. All right, who else do we have on deck? I've got Judith on deck. And then I'm scrolling back up through the comments, and Anna says, I hated Clippy. Anna, same. Clippy and I are not friends. That's the paper clip from Microsoft Word for those of y'all playing along at home. Okay, so Judith and then Mary Jane will be on deck after that. Judith, here's your card. Your card is the Four of Water, and the herb associated with it is one of my best friends, mint. Yes, I consider certain plants to be my best friends. This is who I am as a person. Actually, I'm working very closely with mint in the moment, and it has to do with my listening practice, as well as a plant I bought from Whole Foods, a mint plant. I bought a couple months ago. I can't put it in the ground yet. It's not quite time. So I've been keeping this mint plant alive, even though it really wants to spread out. Mint, you might know, is it could be considered invasive. I don't consider it invasive. I consider it a friend. But mint will like become ground cover. It will come back year after year. It is hard to kill, which is good if you don't have a green thumb, and it's very prolific. It's also associated with abundance and money. Now, the Four of Water. Fours are cards. Fours in general numerology are about work and play, rest and pushing. Like the kind of, that kind of push and pull. I think of Saturn's influence a little bit when I think of the number 4, that kind of push and pull. And in particular, when it comes to water, we're talking about the Four of Water really is a card of, it's a bummer card. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a card about blah. It's a card where you're maybe like doing what you should be doing, but you're feeling blah. Like you have choices, but you don't necessarily feel great about any of your choices. There's a sense of boredom. There's a sense of disappointment. You are not a person who is generally bored because you are a person who has, in my opinion, endless energy to learn new things and endless energy to be creative and endless energy to kind of engage with life. Especially creatively. And when the Four of Water comes up for people like this, it's usually a sign that for whatever reason we have abandoned that creative spark within ourselves, sometimes out of necessity, right? Sometimes because we're like, oh, I don't have time for those right now. Sometimes to get other needs met, right? So it's not like a judgment. But at this point, you're like, all right, when do I get to feel good? When does life start to feel like I'm living? That is the message of the Four of Water. And so I want to present to you that you get to make these choices, right? If you're feeling bummed about your life, I want you to take a moment to go in the polar opposite direction and do something just for the sheer friggin' pleasure of doing it. Give yourself permission to expend your resources just for joy. And mint in particular points us to the concept of abundance. Growing where you're planted and leafing out no matter what happens. This is something you're very capable of. Our creative sparks are greatly abundant creatures. They're just like, whatever, I'm creative. It's a desert, no problem. It's shady, no problem. You forgot to water me for 2 weeks. Whatever, here I am. And that's like really the energy to approach your life right now with. It's like, whatever, I'm going to keep growing. So there. Please sing it. That is the energy that is required of you right now to get past the blahs, which nobody likes the blahs. So there you have it. Mary Jane says, I love this deck. I know, I love it too. Isn't it an absolutely beautiful deck? It is, it's the newest deck that I've, purchased in the last little bit of time, and I'm in love with it. It's so beautiful. And this artwork is like, so can I just like, look at this, appreciate this gorgeousness. This is photorealistic artwork done, I think mostly in colored pencil. Like, are you kidding me? Just like the mastery of the illustrator. Like, my goodness. Judith says, feeling very minty. Minted up, girlfriend. All right, I next have Mary Jane on deck. Let me see if Mary Jane had a question. I'll do a little scrolly scroll. A little scrolly scroll. Love life advice. Okay. And after that, I've got Patty Bell. And I think that takes us to the end of our card requests at the moment. If you're tuned in, though, and you want a card, let us know. Drop a cat in the chat. Tell me. All right, love life advice from Mary Jane. Okay, we have again, I love how things come up repeatedly. We have the Mother of Air, Motherwort. Now, I want to talk to you first, Madre of Air, I should say. I don't need to, like, English wash that. But Madre means mother. And we associate this with the Queen of Air. I want you to look at your own power and your power as a woman and what that means to you. And I'm not talking about some, like, bogusness of, like, the power of your femininity. Unless that's something you connect with. Don't let me make fun of that. That's something that for me has been a disempowering message, the idea that I have to perform femininity to be empowered. But I think for some people there really is a power in leaning into that side of themselves. But I'm talking about how your sense of personal power interplays with what it means to you and what your experiences have been as someone who was born female and raised female and what that feels like. This is something that examining this would be helpful to you for the next step of your love life. You are asked to come to your love life with your power and with your wisdom. And I am aware, both because I've heard you talk about it and because I too am a female in the world who has had these experiences, I am aware that both in romantic entanglements and elsewhere, women in their power and women in their wisdom are not always celebrated or sought out, or are sometimes like subtly punished for this. And what's important for you right now is to hold tight onto your wisdom and not let anybody trample it. Rather than, the Queen of Air is not the person who is going to like make herself smaller to make the situation more comfortable. The Queen of Air is going to say, I'm sorry you're uncomfortable, but I'm going to be just as big as I am. And I'm not going to pretend I know less than I do. And if that's a problem, that sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. The Queen of Air is going to bluntly say, listen, it's wacky to try and make me make myself smaller or try to make me diminish my intellect. So that may be the energy that you need to be coming to your love life with. I'm going to even say perhaps a slightly challenging energy. And I'm going to say that this will act as both a filter and a beacon. Mary Jane says, smaller, never again for sure. I want you to, instead of worrying about like, oh, I don't want to come off as bitchy. Oh, I don't want to, come off as difficult. I don't want to turn someone off by being too big or being too cranky or seeming like an angry feminist. Instead, I'm going to suggest that you loudly and unapologetically be your biggest self, because it will be a filter and it will be a beacon. It will naturally filter out, like, yes, it will turn people off, and that's a blessing because then you won't have to deal with their crap. And the people who are attracted to that, of which there absolutely are people, the people who are like, yes, I love a woman in her power, are the ones who will naturally gravitate towards you. So this is a case where simply being yourself in its loud and brightest form will do the work for you of allowing the correct people to come to you and like being like, keeping the incorrect people at a distance. So there's your love life advice. Be the Queen of Air. Be the Queen of Swords. Speak your truth. Speak it loudly. Don't waste time on people who try to get you to shut up. Patty Bell, my love, I am going to pull a card for you. Let me see if there's any particular, I don't see. Okay, I do see a question. Patty Bell, how to work with a heavy Saturn influence in my chart right now. My heart going out to you right now. It's funny because we were just talking about Saturn earlier and fours, and all I can say is you and me both. I don't know if Saturn's going on in my chart right now, but I don't know what's going on with that, but I feel the Saturnine, I feel the effects. So let's talk about this. How to work with the heavy Saturn influence of my chart right now. Four of air. Oh my gosh. I was thinking to myself, fours and Saturn. Here we are with the four of air. Lavender. Don't you love lavender? Some people hate lavender. And by the way, you're allowed to. Not everyone has to like things that everyone like. I like lavender though. I love the smell of lavender. It's very, it's like a very fresh smell to me. And not like so sweet that it makes you annoyed. It's that nice mix of floral and aromatic. Anyway, lavender is the herb that we use for everything. That, like, if you go into, and I'm sorry to, like, be a cliche, like, if you go into, like, a, you know, essential oil group, or, like, a herbalist group, or, like, a witchy group, you know, it's going to be like, put some lavender on that. Like, lavender in the DIY witchy space is the equivalent of, have you tried turning it on and off again? Lavender is our all-purpose, like, let's fix all the things. And it is also, oh, hi, Upasna. Please tell me if I'm pronouncing your name correct, because that's important to me. Upasna, you may absolutely ask a question. Please go right ahead. You'll be on deck. So what I'm trying to say to you is lavender is a little bit of a cure-all, herbally speaking. It can be used to help you calm down. It can be used if you use more lavender, it actually turns around and begins to have a stimulating effect, and it's what's known as an adaptogen, meaning it kind of shows up where you need it to show up for you. So I'm gonna first of all suggest, if you got any like lavender or lavender essential oil, just like give it a good friggin' sniff a couple times a day, because aromatherapy really does help. And if nothing else, it'll brighten your mood if you're a lavender fan. Oh wow, that's hilarious. I did not see this comment. Patty Bell says, I am diffusing lavender 24/7 right now. Wild. Yeah, that's crazy, but good. Okay, keep doing that. And the Four of Air is a card of rest. You can see that this person has gardening tools. There's a gathering basket, right, full of the lavender, and there's a couple of gardening Crocs. No shame on the Crocs if people find Crocs comfortable. I don't really feel like they are comfortable, but I know a lot of people love them. Like, enjoy them. Croc it out. You know, I'm not here to Croc shame. And then we have like some gardening tools. We have a scythe and a little, I don't know what these things are called. These little pokey ones, the ones that look like a big fork. And gardening gloves. And you may notice they're not in use. They have been laid to rest. Now is not the time to try to push forward and do more. Now is a time to take care of yourself. And I know Saturn is a planet of limitations. It can be a planet that pushes you to work, that pushes you to use your willpower. But actually, no. Saturn pushes you to use structure to your advantage. How can you structure your life such that you get more opportunity for rest and restoration? I know that's not 100% possible. It's not 100% possible in most people's lives, and maybe even less possible in your particular life as a caretaker and someone with a lot of responsibilities. But you are also very good at this. You are good at building your life around what matters to you. So how can you structure your life right now so that there is more of an opportunity for relaxation? I'm not even going to say for like, yes, self-care, but not the hard kind of self-care. This is not a time for you to be like, well, it's time for me to delve through my inner childhood trauma, because that's like a lot on you when you already have a lot on you. It's also not the time for you to be like, I'm going to do the difficult self-care and I'm going to make 50 doctor's appointments and all of that. And I'm not saying that's not important. It absolutely is. But you've been doing the hard stuff. And it's time for you now to do the easy stuff, to give yourself opportunities to rest, to appreciate what you have and to appreciate yourself, and to let yourself just, you know, sit back and watch something stupid on TV and like have a beer, or your personal equivalent of what that would be. You know, it's an opportunity for you to rest and relax. And let's do that in a structural Saturnine way, right? Like, let's actually build it in. Let's do it purposefully. Let's put on the to-do list those things that we know will make us feel that way, that will make us feel like take the weight off a little bit so that we can relax. Judith is saying aromatherapy. Yes. Yeah, big yes. All right, Upasana says, thank you. Wanted to know when my hubby and I will reunite since he's filed for a divorce. All right, I'm going to pull, I'll pull for you a general card on this, because what I always tell people, and especially when it comes to relationship questions, free will is a thing. You have free will, he has free will. Everyone who interacts with both of you has free will. So we can't actually pinpoint the exact thing of what will happen, because free will and fate, like, they're two different things, right? Like, yes, you can believe or not believe in fate, that certain things are fated and certain things are meant to be, but we always have free will. Those around us have free will. So for me to say this is definitely going to happen, well, at any moment, one of you might wake up and make a new choice and completely change your trajectory, because that's our privilege as human beings, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a card for you about how can you navigate this situation, you know, as it is. How can you, whether it's to heal yourself or whether it's to work towards, you know, what you want. It sounds like you're hoping for to be reunited. But tell me if I'm reading that wrong. But let me pull a card for you that's kind of an advice card for you about, like, what are your best steps as you go through this. What I have here is the Hierophant. And this is, in this deck, cacao is the herb related to that, which I really like. The Hierophant is usually a card of status quo and or spiritual leadership. Cacao has both been used in sacred ways in some cultures, as well as is associated with joy and passion. You know, like, everybody friggin' loves chocolate. Not everybody. There are people who don't, and it's okay. But chocolate is associated with, like, indulgence, whereas the Hierophant is associated with, to some extent, like, structure, and externally imposed structure, externally imposed values and ideals. And so all this is to say that I want you to think right now about what's most important to you, what lights your heart on fire. That's the chocolate side. And also what your deeply held beliefs are. What beliefs are affecting you and what values are affecting you about this marriage, about this relationship? And is there any push and pull there? Are there things that maybe your heart, your inner child, your inner fire really wants that is at odds with your beliefs? Or is it that your beliefs and your inner fire are in alignment, but the situation isn't matching those, you know? I don't know, only you know. Only you can know what's going on for you internally. But what you're being invited to do right now is to look at your values and lean into what's really important to you, and also lean into, like, what's important to you kind of spiritually, your values, what you believe in, and what's important to you in terms of, like, what makes you feel like you, what makes you feel like life is special and worth getting up in the morning for. And I want you to just spend some time identifying those things. Like, maybe it's a good time to do that homework and be like, yes, sacred. She said, I believe it's sacred. So I want you to lean into what you think is sacred right now and let that be a teacher to you through this process. I'm not going to promise that means that you're going to get an easy out. I'm not going to promise that means things are going to work, you know, out with your husband, or, you know, whatever. You might have a difficult time ahead, and that's going to be determined by your choices and his choices together, like the intermixing of those two sets of choices, because that's how relationships work. But either way, I want you to know you can do it in a way that feels right for you, and you can do it in a way where you stay deeply in alignment with what's sacred to you, and also in alignment with your joy. I want you to prioritize both things right now. No matter what is going on externally, I want you to make it a priority to find some joy every day. That's important for you right now. And no matter what is going on externally, I want you to make it a priority to check in with what you feel is sacred every day, whether that's a spiritual practice for you, whether that's some moment of silence and meditation. You know what that is for you. And that's going to keep your feet on the ground, as well as keep you, you know, like, keep your heart afloat during this time that's obviously difficult on you. So that's your prescription. Joy and sacredness. Look at us. It's 11:58. I'm right at the end. What amazing timing. I'm going to do something I don't do every month, but I'm going to do it because I have a couple of extra minutes. I'm going to pull a card for myself for this coming month. And I'll share with you contextually, I've been engaged in a multi-day listening practice. I'm taking my own advice this year. I suggested at the very beginning of the year doing a practice of releasing, followed by listening, followed by drawing, in other words, setting an intention and trying to draw what you want to. And I am engaging in that practice myself in a big way. I'm almost undertaking it as a personal quest. I'm in the listening phase right now. And it's interesting that I happen to embark on this listening phase at a time when like everybody seems to need to be listening, seems to need to be a student, because we have big page energy and big air energy. Upasana says, that's right. Joy and sacredness. Bless you. Thank you. Bless you too. Thank you so much for coming on today. And I really wish you luck with everything. I'm not in charge of the universe, but I hope things work out in a way that make you really happy. You deserve it. So I'm going to pull a card for myself. See what the universe has to say to me at this moment. Justice and cannabis. Cannabis is associated with justice. I love that choice. I just love that choice by this deck creator to be like, yep, let's do this juxtaposition. Cannabis, and I'll share with you that I am pro legalization of cannabis, and also not really a cannabis user, just because it doesn't tend to do things to my system that I feel great about. Brings anxiety for me. But cannabis has been, if you are not aware, at the forefront of so many kind of justice-y questions for centuries. And it really starts with, I believe it was the company DuPont, back a long time ago, trying to get cannabis outlawed because they wanted their materials and their kind of novel things that they were creating to do well on the market. And because hemp, cannabis, was a plant that was so useful for so many things. So it began to be demonized because capitalism. And now we're seeing a real big movement to legalize cannabis use in many different ways. And we see some traction happening in different states. And so I think it's interesting that we chose to juxtapose justice and cannabis here, because I really feel like that represents to me the sense of the underdog having its day. Cannabis is a great plant. It's useful for many things. And it has been really demonized by both puritanical culture and like just for capitalistic purposes because some company didn't want it on the market, right? And so what I have to share with you is, to me, this card represents justice in the form of the little guy getting his due, in the form of, you know, things working out the way they need to. Now, whether I can view this as a predictive card, like I'm like, that feels nice. I feel like in some ways in my life I'm an underdog right now. It's been a rough year for me. Or whether I view this as an advice card, which is to be a foot soldier for justice, which would mean showing up deeply for myself, which would mean not giving up on myself, right? And I'm going to go ahead and take it as an advice card because that's actionable. Because for me personally, I don't want to pull the cards and be like, what's going to happen? And then be like, la da da, great. Now I know what's happening. I want to pull the cards and be like, what can I do? And maybe that's because I am a control freak and a Virgo. But I like to be like, what's actionable? How can I move forward? And I'm going to take this card as an invitation to show up for myself as an underdog and for other underdogs in my life, to be an upstander rather than a bystander, someone who stands up for others when the situation warrants it, rather than someone who watches it go down. And to apply that same attitude towards myself. And that's how I can be a foot soldier of justice. That is my big association with justice, is when justice comes up, it's not just about like, will justice be served? It's us remembering we have something to say about this. We can be actionable here. And Savannah just asked, have you tried CBD? Not in a meaningful way. I have like a CBD chapstick that a friend gave me. And that's like, and it doesn't disagree with me, and it's a good chapstick. So no, I haven't, but I'm also open to it. I'm not like, I'm not hating on it. I just haven't gone down that road. But curious, you know, because I know that a lot of people have had really good results with it. Also want to highlight this wonderful comment from Anna. Every drug on the market today began as a plant. Yes, thank you. All things are chemicals, right? Like the whole chemistry came from us analyzing the world around us. It didn't come from us like making things out of magic. We're not magicians. It came from us isolating different components to like literal plants and things that exist in our ecosystem already. Every drug on the market began as a plant. Plant, venom, algae. It began as something that the earth provided. Yeah, matter of fact, I think I always come back to aspirin, which is like, a very, very typical, like, over-the-counter kind of drug people use for a lot of things. Aspirin naturally occurs in willow bark. And there's evidence that as far back as, like, hundreds of years ago, that our Neanderthal ancestors actually used to chew willow bark to relieve pain, to relieve, like, toothache and stuff like that. So that's really, really interesting to know that, like, in its natural form, in one way or another, aspirin has been with us. Judith says, we are two magicians. Okay, fair. But I'm just... but we're not like, poof, a new element. Poof, a new chemical. These things... excuse me. These things all ultimately get isolated from plant use. And to me, it both... I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, and I'll promise I'll keep it brief. To me, it both validates and also is a wise word of caution around things like herbalism, around things like the use of essential oils. Essential oils, you could say, are concentrated herbalism, right? Herbalism, we take a plant, we identify its properties. This has been really a tradition that's been in various cultures, developed through trial and error and application in actual practice over thousands of years. I'm talking about herbalism now. And essential oil use, while considered a woo-woo thing, like, really what it ends up with is a hyper-concentrated version of the active ingredients, so to speak, of that plant. And like anything, when you hyper-concentrate something, it becomes more potent. It can hurt or it can heal. So you can actually mess yourself up with essential oils, kids. Essential oil safety is real, and they should always be used properly diluted by a carrier oil. Even if you think it's fine, it's not fine. You should dilute your essential oils so that you don't give yourself a sensitivity or accidentally harm you or someone else that you're trying to help. And to me, that's a validator. That means, yes, it's potent, like any drug, right? When you take a drug, when your doctor prescribes you something, the doctor goes over for you, if they're a good doctor, the costs and benefits of the drug, right? They go over with you, what are the risks? What could be possible side effects? And yet, how could this help you? And then you decide together, again, if they're a good doctor, whether this is the right next step for you and your medical health. And I'm here to say that that same level of discernment and thought should be applied to things like herbalism and essential oils and all of these quote-unquote woo-woo modalities that really are... we'll call them more traditional modalities, and the same level of both caution and curiosity for their possibility should be applied, in my opinion. Savannah says, we love your tangents, and essential oils are no joke, kiddos. It's true. It's true. I have had them be very helpful to me, and I have also have like experience like things like a sensitivity reaction from like not using it properly, diluted or whatever. Also remember, the way to dilute oil is with oil. It's not with water. Oil and water don't mix. We learned that like really early in elementary school. So just putting a drop of essential oil in your water glass doesn't dilute it one bit. So instead, use a carrier oil, something like coconut oil or olive oil or almond oil. Lots of options for you. I'm off my soapbox. And it says, homeopathy is key, starting small and adjusting as you go. Yeah, I'm going to like highlight that. Like there is never any harm, whether it is Western medicine, whether it's something over the counter, or whether it's some, herb, or whether it's like a habit that you're trying to change in your life. There is never any harm in taking a baby step and seeing what happens and then deciding if you level up to the next step, or if that was enough, or if that didn't work out, because baby steps are easily reversible and easily buildable. Go slow. Slow growth is sustainable growth. And that brings us to the end of our Witchy Weather Report. Thank you so much, everybody, for being with me today. Thank you for spending time with me. I want to let you know, if you haven't heard it yet, there is a new episode of Sassafras Cast that came out 2 weeks ago. I confess I didn't really promote it a whole lot, and it's not because I'm not proud of it. I'm super proud and excited about this episode, and I've just had a lot going on in my life. So if you haven't gotten to, go check out the March episode of Sassafras Cast, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Sassafras Cast, all one word, SASSAFRASCAST. Because it's an interview with Caitlin Liz Fisher. They are an awesome deck creator and as well as like a personal development coach. I had a really fascinating conversation with them, and we also got to explore their new oracle deck called the Emerald Deck of Intuition. So that's a really, really cool episode of Sassafras Cast. Check it out. Go find it. You'll enjoy it, I think. All right, loves. As always, I'm signing off. If you want to stay in touch with me, you can. Wherever you're at, message me on social media, comment, hang out. Make sure you follow me so you get notifications next time I have something to share with you. I will be doing another episode of Sassafras Cast about 2 weeks hence. I always do it the second Sunday of the month. And then the next Witchy Weather Report will be 1 month from today. It's always the last Sunday of the month. That's all I got to say to you. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Y'all are the best.